All living organisms rely on it, plants and animals alike. But why? That's right. Energy helps things move. It helps things grow. Remember that one fact that everyone can recall from science class? That mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell? Yeah, even on a microscopic level, that's energy, baby. But lately I've been needing a bit more energy in my life when it comes to my home theater system. I not only wanted to see and hear movies well, I wanted to feel them more. My system just needed a little extra energy. Well, that has recently changed, my friends. I got the energy I was looking for. So let's get into it. For quite some time in my theater, I had the Outlaw Audio Model 7000X powering 7 of my ear-level speakers, and then a BasX A7 powering the rest. Then I introduced the Fiera 8, which powered my surround backs and height speakers along with the 7000X. But it's always been that, a mix of 2 different brands, sometimes 2 different amp classes, since the 7000X is a Class AB and the Fiera 8 is Class D, for example. But never had I powered my entire system with the same brand of external amps. That is, until Aperion Audio were kind enough to send out not 1, but 2 E7 energy amps to power all 9 of my ear-level speakers and 4 heights. But before we get into my experience with these amps over the past couple of weeks, let's go over some. E7 of course means that it is a 7-channel external amp, but there are also the E2, E3, and E5 for your various amplification needs. These are Class AB amps, so they are powerful, yet efficient, but heavy. The E7 in particular weighs 70 pounds or 31.6 kilograms, so be sure to stretch and do some jumping jacks to warm up your body before hefting around these bad boys to minimize any risk of injury. My name's Dale and stretching is for wimps. Check this out. Go! Oh, shit. Oh. That's gonna put me out for at least a week. Don't be a Dale. Boom. What's great about the specs listed online is that they provide you with the numbers for both 2-channel and all channels driven. 180 watts into 8 ohms and 300 watts into 4 ohms, 2 channels driven, or 150 watts into 8 ohms and 230 watts into 4 ohms, all channels driven. No guesswork there, my friends. These amps feature both RCA and XLR inputs, which is a must-have for me personally since I prefer XLR whenever possible. And speaking of inputs, when using the RCA inputs in particular, the signal-to-noise ratio is 96 decibels compared to an impressive 108 decibels when using the XLR inputs. Yet another transparent spec that Aperion isn't shamed to disclose. But it's also proof that using XLR connections does give you a better signal-to-noise ratio. Inside there are high-performance toroidal transformers, which I know some of you out there are big fans of. Besides the usual inputs on the rear, there also is a nifty trigger on-off switch, as well as trigger in and out ports in case you need to daisy chain more than one amp. On the front there is a power button, but also this really kick-ass Aperion logo that glows a deep red when the system is off, then turns white when the system is on, but not too bright either. But I did reach out to Dallas at Aperion Audio to ask him if the front logo could be turned off. He said they did go back and forth with this, but ultimately the final consensus was that you can just turn the amp all the way off by pressing and holding the power button for a couple seconds if you want. But there are plenty of other people out there that want to keep that deep red glow as if you're looking at a spaceship command center. So there's that for you fellow nerds like me. Typically when I test out an amp, I watch scenes from A Quiet Place Parts 1 and 2 since I want to make sure there isn't any audible hiss coming from the speakers during those quiet parts. But also I want to see how they can handle minimal sound design. Wind blowing, rustling of leaves, footsteps on sand, nothing but a heartbeat when the audience is hearing the scene from the perspective of the deaf daughter. But going through my physical media library, I was reintroduced to another standout scene to test an amp, and that is the intro to Hannah from 2011 by director Joe Wright. You're presented with nothing but the sound of the Arctic air and faint movement of ice on the water, footsteps of a caribou, Hannah stalking amongst the trees. But what makes it even better is that you're also snapped out of those quiet moments with gunshots that reverberate into the Arctic tundra for miles. So it's also a testament on how well your amp can handle those massive transient spikes. There was also no music during the entire intro, so it's just pure sound design and dialogue and nothing else. I was so blown away by how well the E7 amps were handling the scenes that I found myself just watching the movie. I mean, I've seen it plenty of times because it's one of my all-time favorites, but it was like I was watching it for the first time since I was getting a level of raw power that I hadn't experienced quite to this degree with the previous amps I had connected. And you know what else is strange? I don't know if this is just a quirk of the IOTA AVX17, but connecting these energy amps seemed to make the subwoofers perform better? Don't ask me how or why, I just know that I hadn't felt quick little bass impacts like that during the target practice shot in Hannah. All that had changed was the amps. Same subs, same speakers that I've had for several months now, same preamp. Maybe it's because of the speakers themselves having a little bit more power fed to them by the E7 amps, they were pumping out chest-thumping mid-bass frequencies better when combined with the subwoofers? Again, I'm not exactly sure how, but that's why I just wanted to keep watching Hannah to see what other little surprises might have presented themselves throughout the film. That, and once the Chemical Brothers soundtrack kicked in at certain parts, whoa, that sounded the best I had heard it as well. But with all the many factors at play here, just to be transparent, I'm not sure if all of you will experience changes like this when using the energy amps. I'm just being candid about the differences that I personally heard. But I always love moments like that, where I think I've reached peak performance with my system for a while, watching various movies and TV shows, etc. Then something else comes along that improves my movie watching experience just enough to make me want to watch certain movies all over again, to hear them in a new light, so to speak. And that's what these energy amps did, plain and simple. The combination of having speakers that can handle lots of power, a preamp processing the audio, using XLR cables, Class AB amps with toroidal transformers, that must be one hell of a perfect storm of home theater components working in tandem, at least for me. Before hooking up these amps to my system, I wasn't expecting much, honestly, just because an amp is an amp, right? Sure, there are quieter amps out there, since I do hear a slightly audible hiss from my speakers when I put my ear right next to the tweeter, but it's virtually silent when sitting in my main listening position because who's gonna listen to an entire movie with their head that close to a speaker? All I can say is that there was an audible difference when I watched my go-to scenes, impacting my chest a bit more, sounding a bit snappier when sudden loud sounds happen, like gunshots, and just having this slightly more aggressive response to dynamic shifts, quiet to loud, loud to quiet, which is something that I prefer. Now, what I'm about to say is a subjective point of view, but I think I just personally enjoy what a Class AB external amp brings to the table. I don't have to turn it up as loud compared to a Class D amp just because of the sheer power of them. That's why the Outlaw Model 7000X was connected for almost a year before connecting these energy amps, and now I kinda wanna keep it this way. I guess unless I find that other thing that once again improves my system to where I want to rewatch my favorite movies all over again. But for now, I am one happy camper thanks to the E7 amps. Thank you for joining me on this review of the E7 energy amps from Aperion Audio. Of course, I couldn't get around to watching all of my favorite movies with this improved setup, but hell yeah, I'm gonna get to it over the next few weeks at least. And now it's your turn. Have you been holding off on getting amps of this caliber? Are you curious about external amps in general and what they can provide to a home theater system? Obviously, I recommend them if possible, and it should be a goal for any home theater enthusiast to really get some power and channel separation throughout your system. So let's have a conversation about external amps, shall we? Now, if you're salivating over anything Aperion Audio makes, like the new Theatrus line, Verus or Novus bookshelf or tower speakers, or some clearest angled in-ceiling speakers, don't forget to use my discount code EO10 for 10% off any regularly priced item. And with that being said, as always, please be kind to each other out there. Don't just watch TV and movies, experience the improved nuances you get with some energy amps powering your speakers. And of course, always be listening.